Whether you're new to ball pythons or a seasoned pro, there are certain routines that we have to follow to ensure that those animals thrive. In this series, we're going to cover 5 routines that are going to help you do that. Let's check them out. Hey guys, welcome back to CNC Reptiles. I'm Chris.
I'm Carly.
And today we're starting a brand new series around routines. Specifically 5 routines that are going to help your ball pythons thrive.
But before we get started, if you're new, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when we have new content.
That's a very good point, Carly. Thank you for pointing that out. So, as I said, guys, today we're going to start a brand new series. It's around specific routines, and we really came up with 5 routines that we think are really important that we've seen in the few months that we've had ball pythons have helped make us successful and help these little guys thrive. So the first one, we actually did a full quarantine setup routine a few months back. But the first one is quarantine. That's definitely the first routine that you got to make sure you have down to ensure that your new snakes and potential existing snakes don't get sick and continue to thrive. Carly, what's the second routine?
Cleaning.
Cleaning, that's right. Yeah, we got to make sure that we have clean enclosures, right? And we have a great routine around that. The third one is going to be something that sometimes ball pythons get a bad rap for, and that's feeding. So we're actually going to go through our entire feeding routine. We've done plenty of feeding videos showing you, showing these guys and how they eat, but we haven't gone through the entire routine yet. And so, Carly, what's the fourth one? Handling. That's right. How we handle them, right? So how we everything from how you pick them up out of the tub when you shouldn't, different things like that. And then finally, the final routine we really want to talk about is really observation. Now, observation, I guess, in itself isn't its own routine, right? It's actually something we're going to be doing while we go through these other routines and these other processes that we're going to share with you. But guys, it's probably the most important thing that you can do with your ball pythons. These animals will teach you, and I'm sure you've heard me say this in other videos if you followed the channel for a while, but these animals will teach you literally everything that you need to know about them. You just have to be willing to listen. So what we're going to do, we thought we would pull out Peanut. So y'all seen Peanut, and this is Kalahari, who's our newest ball python, because what we're going to actually go over today is quarantine. Right? And so, like I said, we've done a full video that we'll link here, but we want to briefly touch on the high points of quarantine and how we quarantine our animals, why it's important that you quarantine your animals. Now, if you're a brand new ball python owner, maybe you only have one snake, quarantine may not be the biggest, necessarily the biggest routine you've got to worry about. If you only ever plan on having one snake, then probably not have to worry about quarantine. But one thing I can tell you guys, and if I can impart anything, it's these little things right here are extremely addictive. They may be the worst drug that I've ever seen in my life. They are. We started out with 2, we've quickly grown to 5, and they are just. It's addictive. It's crazy how when you have one, you definitely want to have more than one. So having a good idea of how you're going to quarantine your snakes is really. Or having that routine, I guess I should say, is it's really good to have. So, Carly, do you remember that quarantine routine that we did, or the quarantine video that we did? Do you remember any of the points that we talked about? You have to have for a good quarantine process. You don't remember any of them? So actually, I guess we didn't do a really good job of teaching about quarantine. Do you remember? So the first one was basically location. You remember that? So location. So at the time, we had Cutie and Bubbles, who are back here. We had them upstairs. We didn't actually have the reptile room built yet. And at the time, we actually only had Peanut and Angel were the only 2 snakes that we had gotten that were outside of the original clan of Bubbles and Cutie. And so you have to have a location separate from where your current clan of ball pythons is. Now, quarantine in of itself, unfortunately today, don't really have to tell you what quarantine means, right? We're all self-quarantining right now due to the coronavirus. but ultimately we just got to keep them separate, right? And so we had to find a different location, which was downstairs in the office, and that's where we set up our quarantine rack. So Carly, do you remember what the second and third one were? They were kind of linked together. No, not at all. All right, so I'll give it to you. So the second and third kind of linked together were the quarantine setup itself, okay? So we had a completely separate rack. It's actually this rack back here that they're still in. But it was a completely separate rack. We had a completely separate set of feeding tongs and heat guns and snake hooks and water and F10 cleaner and all that. Completely separate. With the idea that if I use the same tongs, snake hook, anything with these guys, and then went and used it with my older two, essentially I've defeated the purpose of the quarantine, right? Because I'm using the exact same things on two sets of animals that I shouldn't be. So the third one then was the tub setup, and just really quickly, the tub setup that we used for the quarantine group, very minimalistic to start, just paper towels, a water dish, and a hide. Reason being, if they have mites or they have any type of respiratory infections or anything like that, you're going to easily see that on the paper towel. We do that for the first 30 days. Then we switch them over to ReptiChip, and just to ensure that they continue to thrive there. So that was the first three things. I'm going to ask you if you remember number 4, but my guess is you're probably not going to remember number 4, right? How long? Yeah, how long you keep them in quarantine, right? So the duration. And the funny thing is, guys, you'll see, and I mentioned this in the video, but you'll see anywhere from 30 days is plenty of time, all the way up to a year, right? Now, ultimately what happened is we kept our girls, so the last one we got was Kalahari, we kept them in quarantine for 60 days. So Peanut actually wound up being in quarantine for almost 3 months. By the time it was all said and done. But Kalahari was the last one that we got. She was in quarantine with the others for 60 days, didn't really see anything. She's about to go in the shed, it looks like. Maybe that's what she was hanging on her hide. Sorry, squirrel. So she wound up being in there for about 60 days. And as you can see now, we're in the snake room that we built, and all of them are together, so we're not too worried about that anymore. So again, guys, it's the location, it's the quarantine setup itself, your tub setup, and then the duration that you're going to have your snakes in quarantine. The final thing we talk about is the actual routine in how you interact with your quarantine snakes in your regular clan. And so really just talk about, if we were to handle the quarantine snakes, we always did it after we handled the other two that we had, right? If we cleaned the original snakes first before we went in and we started cleaning these two. And so really, guys, that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as quarantine goes. The next one that we're going to bring up is, like Carly said, cleaning and then feeding and ultimately handling. But some things that we tend to observe in quarantine and kind of goes in with some of the others, where Peanut had no issues on her original, when she was on paper towels and going to the ReptiChip, never missed a meal, anything like that. Angel, who we actually don't have out, we actually had to take her from ReptiChip and put her back on paper towels. She missed a couple of meals, really just was acting kind of weird while she was on the ReptiChip. We pulled her off, put her back on paper towels, and she's been just going great ever since we did that. We haven't had a problem with Kalahari. This one loves her food. She hasn't missed a meal yet. She's pounding rats left and right. And so anyways, guys, so that's the quarantine and kind of what we're going to talk about as far as the first routine that you really need to make sure that you have down. Like I said, we started it because some people may never use a quarantine routine if you only ever get one snake, but they're addictive, guys. I'm telling you right now, you'll probably wind up with more than one. So guys, we really hope that you enjoyed this video. I guess before we go, we'll give you just a little bit more if you're not familiar with these two snakes. So this is our Desert Ghost female, Kalahari. She is our newest addition to our ball python clan. She is just growing and getting, she's been a little different. Observation with her, even though she's technically out of quarantine, we've only really known her through the quarantine so far, but she is very apprehensive still about being held, even though we've had her and held her almost every day for 60 days. Still very apprehensive. really kind of holds on to you. And we'll actually go over this a little bit closer in our handling video with her, just because she acts so different than the others. And of course, this is Peanut. Peanut is our Butter Inchy Pastel Ghost female, right? So you can see she kind of has that faded out color, very different from Kalahari. And how bright Kalahari is, that's the nature of Desert Ghost. And then Ghost itself is kind of a faded look, right? The Desert Ghost seems to be very bright and vibrant, and the Ghost tends to kind of fade it out. And she's been hanging out in her hide. I think she's getting ready to shed. The eyes are looking a little cloudy for her. But nonetheless, guys, that's what we've got. So quarantine is the first routine. And the next one coming out will be about cleaning. So guys, we appreciate you coming along. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.